application we're discussing right now is for a new restaurant called Cafe Rigaletto.
Rigaletto Restaurant.
Rigaletto Restaurant, where there was Cafe Napoli on the right-hand side of Salem Street as you walk down the street. And they want to turn it from a cafe into a full-service restaurant. Go ahead, Becky.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody. I want to make sure that everyone got a copy of the proposed menu and the floor plan. And the reason we're here tonight, too, is because my clients, who I will introduce you to again, many of you have probably met them before. This is Clara Diaz, one of the owners. This is Alex Herrera, who is the chef, and Nesta Patino, who is also an owner. They're married. And Alex is a fine chef. He's been doing it for over 10 years. Anyways, the purpose of our meeting here tonight is because my clients have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals to allow them to extend the use to a full-service restaurant by installing equipment that would accommodate an expanded menu. And because it's in, a conditional use in the North End to have a restaurant, full-service restaurant anyway, they're required to get that approval. And the board believes that there are additional conditions that would be necessary to safeguard the neighborhood. They would impose those conditions at that time as well. As you know, they were here last year to apply for your support for a transfer of a license from Sapori di Napoli to their business, the Salem Group, which is going to be business as the Rigaletto Restaurant. And they did file their application with the board. The transfer was approved. The license was granted in April. However, it has not opened yet because they ran into some problems. They, at that time, looked at their finances and said, we really, in order to meet our financial obligations, probably need to expand this menu more than what, we thought was essential at that time. And so they decided to do that. And they applied for a short-term permit to do renovations in the kitchen, but then they got a stop work order, so that sort of stopped everything in its tracks, and they have proceeded to try to get the proper architect so that they can develop plans that are really consistent with all the health and safety regulations of the city. So they have met with the health division of the Inspection Services Department, and they're on track as far as that is concerned. What I will make a commitment for tonight on behalf of my clients is that we would file again with the licensing board to amend the description of the license. Obviously, they have to do that anyway because the kitchen would be somewhat expanded. And also to submit to whatever conditions are necessary as far as the neighborhood is concerned, because I do know there is concern about service of alcohol with food. We also, obviously, the big issue here is the installation of an exhaust system. And I do have with us tonight Jim Stewart, who's with Scott Sheet Metal, and they're the people who are actually responsible for the design of the installation of the system. Jim himself has over 40 years of experience doing this sort of thing and probably has done quite a few restaurants in the North End. So he's very, very familiar with what is necessary to make sure that it's installed safely. And we all know about the new requirements about, making certain that these systems are clean for the building and they're inspected by the fire department and by the Inspection Services Department to ensure safety for everyone involved. We did notify 91 abutters. A lot of I did give the board a copy of that list, but a lot of owners, as well as tenants on Salem Street, Prince Street, and Baldwin. So all in all, we felt we tried to do our due diligence. We've also posted in 115 Salem the notice about tonight's meeting, and I also have been in touch with Paul Valentine, who was at one of the meetings that we did attend, 444 Prince Street. I provided him with a copy of the plans for the exhaust system, which he did share with the trustees the other night. And we are trying to set up a meeting with them next week so that if they have any further questions, we can respond to those. So we're trying to do our outreach so that everybody involved feels comfortable with it. You do have a floor plan there. Basically, I wouldn't really call this a change in occupancy because they do have an Article 37 use item which allows them to have a restaurant, although the last use item did call it a coffee shop, ice cream, etc. So, and they did have beer and wine. But in any event, they are putting new equipment in there. And the footprint, however, of the restaurant stays the same. The seating stays the same, it's 40 people. So there's really not an expansion of the space in that respect. In fact, the kitchen actually is in the same area where it was, except there's more pieces of equipment than there were before. I know that there might be some questions as well, but before, if you give begging your indulgence, I'd like Jim to come up here so we can talk a little bit about how this works with the
Jim
installation.
Stewart, Scott Sheebout. This is a typical hood system that you see in the north end. A lot of them, you know, basically. It's a well-duct system that goes all the way to the roof. Everything has to be done by VOCA codes and NFP 96. There's a lot of codes on this thing nowadays. And on Hanover and Salem Street, there's a lot of these. You'll see them all over the place. This would be going in the rear of the building, in the back corner of the building. We have engineered standard drawings for this. It has to get inspected by the fire, the buildings department. It's a typical hood system. You see, there's a lot of them in the north end. We've done a lot of them in the north end. This is all we do. We just do restaurants all over. So basically, that's all.
Could you speak just a little bit to sort of the, you know, I know you have a word for it, but, you know, the mitigation measures for any noise or...
Oh, yeah, there's zone levels on the thing. The fan will be up on the exhaust fan will be up on the, what's that, a 4-story building or something? The exhaust fan's gonna be up on the roof, towards the middle of the roof. And that's the code. It has to be up on the roof, and it has to be 40 inches off the roof level. It's a typically, in the north end, you probably see more of these than any place around. North end and south end, you know? They're everywhere, you know? It's in the back of the building, though. It's in the side of the building, someplace you don't really see. So it's in a good location.
And the fan, I mean, how does it run in quiet or? I mean,
Yeah, it'll be there's a zone,
mitigation-
they call it zone. There's a noise level on these fans, that they can't be over a certain thing. So they have vibrating pads on it, they have isolators, there's rubber mounts that go on the bottom, you know. It's a very quiet thing. It's, no one will hear it, you know.
Okay, so basically then, what I'd like to say is that obviously they had hoped that they would be able to open and operate earlier with their original plan. That didn't work. They have been paying all their bills for the last, I came on board in September, by the way, so I'm just sort of getting up to speed over the last few months and spent a couple of months making sure that they had the right architect, that the plans were drawn properly, that they were reviewed by inspectional services properly, so that they have everything in place that, you know, is consistent with the regulations. But, you know, it's been somewhat financially difficult for them over the past 7 months because they haven't been able to really operate. And we know that you have business concerns as well, and we certainly are ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, concerning the bar now, there was a bar there previously?
Yeah, there was a bar. Yeah, in
And
fact,
how many-
I was in the other night, and it's still there.
How many seats were there at the time?
What is it, 8 or 12 at the bar?
Okay.
It's the actual plan show.
The 30 feet.
1, 2, 3,
Bar
4,
seats.
5, 6,
Oh, no,
7, 8.
eight
8
or-
seats at the bar.
Okay, I have something that shows 6. The old, the current.
Oh, really? Well,
They're in the back on the right, is that right?
yeah, but I mean, as you walk in, the bar will now be on the left, correct? On the left.
So they're going
The
from 6.
gelateria was, you know, with the
Yeah.
gelato.
So they're going from 6 in the back to 8.
Yeah.
Okay. Butters, who'd like to speak? Nikki, go ahead.
Okay, Nikki Rafter, 44 Prince. I didn't understand everything that was said about Paul Ballantyne before. Paul and I live in the same building. Maybe you'll clarify when I get my questions out. 4 problems. About a notice. There was a notice, according to this list, sent to Brian Glynn, who is chair of the Board of Trustees at 44 Prince Street. But the occupants were not notified, to the best of my knowledge. It says sent to tenant, no, and there are 55 units in this building. I was never notified, and I don't know that other people were. The back of the building, which is where the ovens are going to be, and where the vent from the ovens will be, is onto a little garden. You may say there's no garden there because it's a kind of secret garden. It's in between the stores that front on Salem Street and this building called 44 Prince, which used to be part of the Friary, where the gymnasium used to be. And the 44 Prince building is 5 stories high And then a little bit beyond that for some, I suppose, things that make cool and, what do you call those? Things-
Exhaust?
Exhaust,
Mechanicals.
yeah. So the buildings, people live up at the 5th floor, and this is a fourth event that will be on the top of the building that's 4 stories high, and it'll be venting into the apartments on the 5th floor of 44th Prentice. Finally, thirdly, there's the issue about the bar. Now, as I recall, when Supportinopoli came and asked for a beer and wine license, they said it's going to be very quiet, it's going to be cordials only, is what we were told and promised. And there were 6 seats. It's going to be very quiet, it's going to be free for poor people, for a few people who come in after dinner just to have cordials, and there will be no noise, we were told. So there, at least I have 3 major concerns with the project.
What's that?
Yeah, if I could
Go ahead.
respond to well, you know, as far as the notice is concerned, I mean, we obviously felt that by sending it to the chairman of the trustees, that would be disseminated to the rest of the building. Paul did come to the meeting the other night. He informed me that, you know, people were feeling that they weren't notified, and so I immediately connected with him and started texting back and forth, because the trustees are actually meeting the next night, but I couldn't make it that quickly. But I did send him over a copy, a large copy of the exhaust system plan, so that he could share it with the trustees that evening. Then we started texting back and forth about what nights might be available next week to meet. So I think there'll be an opportunity for the building, you know, occupants and tenants or owners to come forward and really get specifics about the system at that time.
Board or occupant?
We're probably going to do everybody. And the major concern for us is where the ventilation duct goes. And is it, you know, out of sight, in a corner?
It pretty
or
much
does it
is.
go up? There's a flat wall back there, and we
Yeah,
can
well-
talk about that. That's one of the key concerns for us.
It's pretty much there's a back wall there, and there is some gardening on that back wall, but it's not going there. It's coming out of the first floor level, and there's a little deck there, and it's going up on the corner of the
Sort
building.
of inside.
Yeah, inside. It's not going in, that duct is not going up on that back wall where the other duct went up.
Maybe I misunderstood you,
Yeah.
but didn't you say it was going to vent from the 4th floor?
No,
The
no,
duct?
the duct's going all the way to the roof.
Yeah.
And it's gotta go in to almost, you gotta go 10 feet in from each side. You gotta be at 10 feet. It's gonna go almost into the middle of the roof, the fan. And you can blow that discharge, but according to the wind, you know, the wind causes problems, you know. But you can blow that discharge any way you want, or you can blow it away from the back building, and you can blow it anywhere. This is a utility blow. It's not like an upblast fan. When you run a lot of duct work, you have to use a certain type of fan. And it's a different type, it's a quieter fan, it's more efficient. And you can blow that air any way you want it. This fan's gonna be up in the middle of the top roof.
I think I understand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it'll be the 4th floor roof, and
And then
we
go
up.
onto the roof, and then into the roof, 10 feet on each side, and then it's gonna be in the middle of the building.
So as I understand it, this is a 6-burner stove plus ovens venting
Yeah,
on the 4th floor.
exactly, yeah.
Well, there was an issue of notice, and we eventually next week.
And hopefully you'll get all your
Yeah.
questions answered at that time. We certainly tried to do our due diligence, and I'm sorry.
I
that we
understand
didn't-
it was struck, that doesn't stick in your fault at all. But I do want to say that we can meet next week, but people have to vote here at this meeting. And there are other issues here, including the bar, which seems that what the liquor license does. That's
Well,
different.
I'm prepared to discuss, you know, let me respond to your other 2 issues if I can before additional questions come. But on the matter of then the bar, well, you know, I know that this place originally got its first relief from the Board of Appeals in 1993 when it became a coffee shop and July for the year, I think. And then somewhere thereafter, they did get the beer and wine license. And then after that, they went into the Board of Appeals again to get a takeout license. But again, from the beginning of its first, incarnation, if you will, as a restaurant of sorts, it's been over 20 years. So I mean, this is a commercial unit. There are 2 commercial units in that building. And pursuant to the condo docs, each of those units has the right to exercise, as a restaurant. It even says coffee bar, restaurant, or other retail use. So I mean, when the property was purchased, the owners obviously paid a purchase price based on the expectations that they could at some point do something more than just a coffee shop. But that being said, my experience, and I've had some over the years with licensing, and certainly beer and wine licenses as well, is that in this particular case, and in the case of a lot of restaurants, fine restaurants throughout Boston, one of the ways in which, you attract, a patron base is to have a place where they can come in, take a seat, have a little tapas, they call small plates, and basically, go home after a couple of glasses of wine. I mean, I don't think this is a bar room. I don't think this is a tavern. This is just another way of servicing patrons who would otherwise, and even if you're dining alone, you come in and you want to have something quickly and go on. I don't think we're looking at the possibility of a very noisy operation. I mean, obviously, even it's funny because the cafes can actually be later at night in terms of more people than a restaurant. I mean, usually people are in and out by say 10:30, quarter of 11, whereas cafes people tend to want to stay a little bit later. The closing hour on this license is 12. All patrons out by 12:30. So I would hope that that would not be a concern that would be actually realized. The other thing is, as I said, we're willing to submit condition on the part of the licensing board that basically says they have to serve food in conjunction with the service of alcohol, which I think would really maintain the nature of this place, which is it's a restaurant. I mean, it's not a bar.
Go ahead.
So I'm not exactly clear. Is the variance specifically to expand the occupancy? Is that what?
Well,
the
I
variance is?
wouldn't say that those words accurately reflect what it is because the occupancy is not expanding. Basically, maybe the nature of the use is changing. Although I had this dispute with Inspection Services at the get-go, saying that I felt that given they had an Article 37, which allows restaurant, in its most general term, and the definition of the zoning code allows restaurant, coffee bar, snack shop, a bunch of things. So it's all inclusive there. Now maybe it was conditioned by, the prior zoning board application, but in any event, so if you concede their concerns, then maybe the nature is changing somewhat. It's getting a little bit more expansive than it was in terms of the menu items. But the actual physical location, I mean, please, it was kind of, well, because, I don't know. I mean, and that's why I was asking for an interpretation and as well as an alternative relief, because frankly, it's delayed them a long time. And while I'm glad to come back here and share all this information with you and get your input, they've basically, been paying rent and a license, fee every month with no income.
I have a question, maybe this is for my own education as well, because I occasionally design places that need exhausts and things like that. There's a licensed professional involved, I guess, so designing this HVAC system or exhaust system, and the work has all been permitted and approved by the city, and you're asking this group of people if it's okay with them? How does it go?
It's been a little frustrating, and I don't mean to say that, people's concerns aren't legitimate. It's just that from the get-go, when they were, their contractor pulled a permit to do renovations in the kitchen, they assumed that because they had an Article 37, which is restaurant use, on this particular occupancy, that they could in fact expand the kitchen equipment to accommodate the menu. But they were told otherwise by the zoning board of
Okay,
appeals,
so that's
saying
what the variance
Specifically
is.
meaning they couldn't go to the roof?
not
Or-
even, no, just the use. The
Okay.
use itself, like a restaurant
in
in
the
its
equipment.
full capacity as opposed to, and it's not really a variance, it's a conditional use, which is a step lower, okay, than variance. Variance is has sort of a higher standard of, proof, so to speak. But, but in any event, so that and another reason they inserted in the refusal letter was that there may be further conditions needed to safeguard the neighborhood. Meaning, you know, that maybe, you know, that there are conditions relative to the installation, which I think there's a letter on file, you know, that was filed with your organization from the condominium trustee, that they would submit to certain conditions with the installation, all of which were designed to safeguard the unit occupants and owners. So, I mean, it is a very confusing set of circumstances, but the fact is the city won't let them open without saying, yes, you can have this expanded use.
Okay, Victor?
Go ahead, Victor, you may clear, all right. I was hoping you were gonna clear it up.
After you, I'll clear it.
First on the alcohol license, you mentioned that you'd be willing to amend the license to require that food be served with alcohol. So that would require an amendment and coming to the community
Yes.
for approval of that amendment. Beside that, though, is there any other reason you have to amend your alcohol license?
Well, certainly we have a new floor plan, right? So we have new equipment. Not that the board just wants to make sure that you've got all your proper permits from the inspection services department. And of course, we would be able to, they actually have health inspection permits, et cetera.
Okay. But you're not changing the number, you're not changing
Capacity
the
is not
closing
changing.
time of midnight 7 days?
No.
And it is currently a beer and wine with cordials license, correct?
Yes.
And you're not proposing to change that either?
No.
Okay, so apparently you don't need changes to the alcohol license unless you agree, per the neighbors especially, to amend it to include the requirement for food with alcohol. All right, now to the zoning issue. Do you have a hearing yet?
March 25th.
Oh, this month, okay. Occupancy, was that actually noted? Did it say change of occupancy in the appeal?
No.
Because occupancy generally can mean two things. It can mean number of seats or number of people in the establishment, but it could also mean the type of use. Maybe that's what was
I think
meant,
that's
is
what
the
they're
type
saying.
of use.
Yeah,
So-
although my argument back was that the definition of restaurant in the actual zoning code definitions includes restaurant, coffee shop, there's a bunch of things.
I guess what's important, though, is what are the specific violations that have been issued? Other than the conditional use?
They think it's an extension of non-conforming use. To have a full-service restaurant in the north end
Yeah.
requires conditional.
Yeah, conditional use. You need approval to run a restaurant, operate a restaurant there. Are there any other violations? Okay.
Not that they've noted.
Thank
just
you.
those two.
Okay, anybody else?
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to take up more time, but I'm going to vote against this. I just want to say that this restaurant, there's never been a restaurant in this place before. It's a very quiet coffee shop. The light shines right into my bedroom window. It's about 25 feet across from my bedroom. And the previous owner very kindly put a curtain up there so we wouldn't have to look at the light all the time at night. Now we're going to get a restaurant till 12, very close to our bedroom window. There's going to be a noise issue, a light pollution issue, as well as the issues that I mentioned before. I don't understand what difference it would make to have a meeting of residents of 44 Prince Street after the horse is out of the barn. I mean, if we're going to vote yes or no tonight on this, surely this sort of thing should be, the issue of the abutters and so on, should be settled before we do the vote. And finally, I'm very concerned about the air pollution from yet another restaurant in this very dense restaurant at Vicinity. Excuse me, thank you all.
You have something?
Yes, Stephanie Hogue, Pension Street. I think we should not vote on this tonight. We would require other applicants to do their zoning first. And the notification, and to work out the issues with the abutters. And we should be fair and consistent in the way we treat applicants. I understand their financial concerns, but they came to this community representing one thing and got the transfer of the alcohol license. For whatever reason, you made a decision to change what the business was going to be. You should have come back to the community at that point, and I think the alcohol licensing board should be notified if they're not already aware
I have
that
told
this is
them.
a change. So I don't think we should be voting on this one way or the other until these issues are worked out, the way we would require other applicants to work out the issues.
They have a hearing on March 25th.
We should ask for it to be deferred.
What do you think? Could we get that?
Well, first, let me offer some historical information. Actually, it supports what Stephanie is saying. On December 18th, 2012, the applicant came to a zoning licensing and construction committee meeting and said, "We are adding only 2 soups, 2 salads, and 1 appetizer. No changes in anything else." Obviously, it's not a major change. The second informational thing I'd like to point out is this issue of notice to abutters. NURA has a very strict notice. We require notice to owners and tenants, which obviously wasn't complied with. But even the licensing board, and I realize this is a zoning matter and not a licensing matter, but there will have to be a licensing matter to follow. The licensing board has notice to abutters, and says that the applicant is required to give notice to the owners of all the properties whose boundaries touch the boundaries of the premises, front, back, left, and right. And anyone who is conversant with practice in this field should know that and should have done that.
Can I respond to? Sure. Before I forget. Basically on the backstory, and again, I came on board in September, and I sat with Nestor and with Clara and Alex and heard what they had been through over the process of 5 or 6 months before I actually found out the case. And you know, I mean, I guess they did at the neighborhood council meeting the other night apologize for what obviously was representations, which at the time I think they thought they could actually swing it, only to find out that they couldn't swing it. And I do know that they did have a hearing before the board in November of 2012. The board deferred it. They came to meet with you guys, I think, on the 10th of December. And the board had been holding the case because of that meeting, and they came before you, and I guess you were looking for a letter from the condominium association trustee relative to the transfer. So the letter was dated December 10th. Maybe it didn't show up that night, but according to the attorney who I spoke with, it was transmitted to a number of parties, including the organization, and saying that they had, you know, they authorized the transfer, although that's probably not the best choice of words, but that's what it said. So then the board pulled the case on the 18th of December because they can't hold it for too long. Now, I don't know whether the attorney informed them that the meeting had been held or whatever, but the board granted the license. And as I said at the meeting the other night, when you have a transfer of an existing alcohol location, there's no question of whether there's a public need. The public need has already been established. All you need to establish is the fitness of the applicant. And clearly, they have no criminal record. Each one of them brings something to the table that, you know, relates to the operation of a restaurant. And so in that respect, just from a purely legal point of view, and, you know, the neighborhood concerns obviously still a concern, but not, you know, not a veto power over it. The licensing board really had no choice but to grant that license. So they grant the license. They still don't get to use it. In fact, I don't know why they didn't get it until April of that year, but that's when the license was granted. And that's when they run into the problems, because now they pull a permit to renovate the kitchen, and whatever they, you know, the scope of the permit maybe wasn't consistent with what they were doing, and that's when they got the stop work order. I mean, clearly, you know, they didn't start out saying we're going to go in there and tell the neighborhood one thing and then do another. But remember, I mean, going into business is not an easy undertaking. it costs a lot of money. And sometimes people, and especially people that are relatively new at this type of endeavor, although each one of them brings something to the table, you know, as I said about the operation of the restaurant, you know, they thought, well, we have an Article 37, or at least the attorney explained it, you have a use item that says you can do a restaurant. So they go and they hire a contractor and they go in and they pull the permit and they start to put in actually a new stove. There is already a lot of equipment in there. It's not like they're rebuilding the place. I mean, they're basically upgrading the equipment. Their condo docs say they can do a restaurant in that location. I mean, everything about the situation certainly made them feel like they were embarking on the right course. That being said, I understand where you're coming from. I've been involved in neighborhood organizations on both sides for 35 years. And so I've been sitting in your shoes, you know, as well. So I understand you know, you're sensitive to all of this. And I understand where you're coming from right now, but, you know, so I mean, that's the thing about the backstory. They're here now, they're trying to make, you know, they're trying to basically do the right thing. They've just spent 4 months with an architect and with inspectional services who has taken them over every obstacle you can imagine that was thrown in their way. And, you know, you talk about why did we get denied? And I've been doing this kind of work for years. I still think that legally speaking, I'm not sure they had, you know, they had a right to refuse them, but we can't fight City Hall sometimes. So we're going with this. We want to be responsive to you, the neighbors. Secondly, I mean, as far as notice is concerned, I mean, and I don't mean to any disrespect because, again, I've been in your shoes. I'm active in organizations in East Boston. We sent over almost 100 letters out. When does the condo unit owner have a responsibility to show up at these meetings? Okay, that's number one. Number two is, I sent out notices to everyone in that building, and 5 of them were returned as, you know, non-deliverable. I sent it to tenants, wherever I looked in assessing, wherever it said the owner lived in Marblehead. I sent it to the owner, and I sent it to the tenant of that unit. So they got double, you know, double notices in a lot of the locations that abutted this. You know, the requirements of notifying abutters are actually, you know, more extensive than some of the organizations like the licensing board and the entertainment division. So I mean, I really feel like we did our due diligence, and now, you know, we're meeting with the unit owners at 44 Prince, and if necessary at 115 too. I'll do another meeting at the Mazzaro because I was in touch with Kyle about using the room next week. I mean, we're trying to do what we have to do before that hearing because they've waited 5 months for this day. So I know that, you know, there are a lot of concerns, and as far as Mr. After, you know, there's a lot, there's Bacos is behind there, Il Dento's behind there, not to say anything disparaging about any of those, because they're great restaurants, but, you know, you're in the North End, there is a mixed-use community, and so it does become difficult from time to time, but I think that whatever your concerns are can be addressed, and that's why we hope that at the 44, which is before, by the way, the zoning board of appeals meeting. So we hope that we can address all of them, including the night, the light and the noise, and I believe that, you know, the ventilation system will be no different than the others that it seems to be working order in that area.
Okay, we gotta move on. Does our research into this vary at all from what she's been saying?
Well, the licensing board notice requirement refers to owners, not trustees. Very clear. And a condominium owner is an owner, and there are 50.
Yeah, but your requirements are vague. I tried to do the best I could, and you've got vague requirements. I did the owners, I did the tenants.
Owners are condominium owners when you have a condominium.
And I did that.
It's
The
very
only one
simple.
is 44 Prince, which we're meeting with
But
next
there are
week.
50 owners.
55.
55,
So
sorry.
you're saying that
Sorry.
people should have to
I
spend
think to answer your
$200 to
question,
notify
Jan,
everyone in within a, you know?
Yes, the applicant can withdraw the March 25th hearing from the Board of Appeal and ask for a new hearing.
Okay. I didn't realize that Nunick had voted on this. I was looking at that site and I didn't see that. Can you tell us how
We
the
voted
vote
to
went?
table it.
You favored it?
We voted to table
Oh, table it. And what was the reason?
because of these outstanding questions.
Okay.
But my understanding was because we said we would meet with the abutters, which we immediately proceeded to do.
So then how could you vote for it after they meet with the abutters if the March 25th is the date that the hearing?
I think we have a motion on the table.
Ask for a postponement?
Can I ask a clarifying question to the motion? What is currently prohibited about liquor license seating? What would be if we table it? It's kind of, what is the issue that we'd be voting on anyway?
if we vote
What are we
today,
voting on?
is to allow them to change from the cafe to a full-service restaurant with all the equipment and the exhaust.
Okay, so it's not, that's it.
Yeah, they already have the license. So would you be willing to wait one more month? It might be better than voting now because they might vote negative. Just to work out with.
I think notification is so important in these neighborhood organizations, and we have to adhere to that. I understand.
Then your requirements have to be a lot clearer.
It has been clear to everyone else that has come before this organization.
Well, they're gonna go
And
before 44, and presumably anybody in 44 who wants to
We
be
have
there
to
will
be
be there.
consistent. It's about a quality of life in this neighborhood where it's a densely populated area, lots of businesses, lots of families, and that's why we exist, so that we can all live comfortably together. And neighbor notification is one of the most important parts of that process.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused then, because, you know, if I'm gonna proceed, I have to know what I'm doing. Because I was told to the right of the building, to the left of the building, across the street from the building, on either side. I did that. 101, 103, 107, 109, 110, 111, 12, 13, 14, 15, 19, 20, 123. Everyone involved in place in 44 Prince Street. So, I mean,
We're not gonna argue about that.
well,
Mary Ann,
I
you
just,
have
you know, I
something?
have an issue with.
Yes, I'd like to say something, please. I live on Noyes Place. I got a notice from the Board of Appeal
Right.
about that. I'm an abutter. I never got any notice from you.
But you can't use the Board of Appeal because they'll mail 150 people, and sometimes they're in East Oshkosh. I've seen those lists. So if they don't put their notice out until 3 weeks before the hearing, how are you supposed to know who they're going to mail? Well, you know, all I can say is you need to come up, even under the law, due process, you need to come up with the process that tells us exactly where we have to
Okay,
do.
we have a process. The only thing,
I'd like to move that on paper.
well, the only issue here is whether you want us to vote now or whether you want to negotiate with 44 Prince and come back.
We have a motion on the floor, and I second it.
Let's see what they have to say.
Oh, wait.
We can do it voluntarily. Okay, so they agreed to defer, and you let us know how the negotiations go, and hopefully we can vote on this next month.
Now, what is your meeting date?
Second Thursday of the month, it's always the second Thursday. of the month. Do you have the?
Well, yes, we should vote to table that. The motion was made, I seconded it.
Thank you.
Because there may be some who oppose.
Okay, can we take a vote on the motion to close?
Well, the motion is to table.
The table, I mean.
Jim, you better explain what the motion is.
The motion is to table so that we don't vote tonight, and hopefully they'll come back next month and they'll have an agreement, positive or negative, that we can listen to.
Now, I hope that, we request a deferral from the zoning board of appeals, we need the support of the community for that deferral, because you know how they are about rescheduling things, that's taking a long time.
Should we write a letter? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it's standard process. Usually, if our office and the post office says that we're ready.
Right.
For them to vote on it, they're gonna defer it anyway.
Well, I just don't want them to sort of, I don't want to have a situation where they say, you know, you've had 3 months and, no, we're going to go move forward.
Yeah, but I think that we could say then that-
We will, I mean, if they say they won't grant the deferral, then we will have to move forward, but more times than not, it's the city council.
Yeah, I mean, I think
and,
we could just, I think we could say that you've been to both neighborhood groups and you need a little bit more time to get
Sort
things
out.
together and meet with the abutters. So I don't think there'd be a problem with that,
Okay, great.
given the circumstances.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to have one more presentation, which is by Rob.
Let's vote.
Yeah, let's go by hand. Okay. We don't have much time. All right. Okay, do we all favor tabling the motion? Please raise your hand. These are all the votes, so I think we do have a majority.
And I am opposed.
Oh, I'm good. How you doing?
I'm opposed to tabling it. I'd like to vote to first night.
Anybody else opposed? Okay, the motion passes. So we will table it. We will vote next week.